I am Battalion Chief Bailey Martin, and we're here for another episode of the Richmond Fire Dialogues. Today, I'm joined by Captain Jamie Potter, Nicole Morgan, and Lieutenant Kevin Knight. We're going to be talking today about mental health, physical health, how the two are connected, and how they both impact how firefighters do their job and also their personal lives. So, Captain Potter, I guess let's get started. And you and I had some discussions about getting this episode together. So, what kind of things made this an episode that you felt like was important for us to tackle?
So, I think that there's a lot of transitions going on in the department right now, and it's hard to battle the transitions as well as the job itself. So I think that it's important to really ensure that our people are being taken care of. And so I felt like with it being May and the mental health aspect of the month of May for the fire service, that this was a great topic to kind of hit on now.
And, this is a topic that's definitely been important to me. I've had my own issues with mental health in the fire service. I've had different times where dealing with some of my coworkers or my own personal experiences, going through a divorce, just the nature of the job in terms of the things that we see and the stresses of that as well. So it's been something that's been important to me for a while. Battalion Chief Brian Turnage and he had kind of a similar revelation about 5 years ago. We both kind of were going through the same kind of self-reflection about mental health at the same time. And we decided to work together to start our peer support team. So we've been working on that, and we can certainly talk about that a little more as we move on. But it's definitely something that's important to me. And the physical side, in my own personal experience, I've always felt that my physical health and fitness has always helped me with my mental health as well. They kind of go hand in hand. So I think that's a good reason to have these two together. So, did you have any other personal experiences for you in the fire service that kind of resonate with you about these two topics?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will tell you personally, I have dealt with my own mental health side of things, not having a support group really. Being a female in the fire service is a challenge in itself. I was super young into my career here with the city and didn't really know how to manage everything that I was seeing, everything that I was doing. And then couple that with a lot of my private lifestyles that I was in the middle of. And so I went down a couple of really challenging roads. Medications weren't working. Talking to the very few people that I had in my life really didn't help. And I tried to do the counseling thing, but I found that wasn't really my outlet or my way of managing and coping. So luckily enough, Chief Ring kind of took me to the side and said, hey, I'm here, and kind of took me under his wing and got me into working out. At the time, he was doing some CrossFit style workouts, and I learned that was my way of coping with everything that I was dealing with. I will also tell you that from a personal standpoint, that Mike and I, my husband, had been dealing with a lot of personal stuff as it relates to his child and her, mental health and those kind of things. So I've battled this both on a personal level and a professional level. And then just seeing the different things that are occurring in the department now and people being worn out and tired, and our call volume increasing, as well as the amount of hours that we're working increasing, and there not being a true work-life balance. How do we battle that? How do we stay at the top of our game and serve the citizens like they deserve to be served in a way that is functional both to them and to us? Because if we lose sight of our people, then we're really going to lose sight of the community. And so I wanted to talk more about the mental health side and the ways of coping with the mental health and all that we're being challenged with right now, and the different initiatives and all the changes in the department right now. in a way that is productive instead of the typical, hey, let's sit around the coffee table and complain and not really solve the world's problems. So that's kind of where that I sit with the topic.
Okay. I think that's a good transition into our first guest, who is Nicole Morgan. She's a counselor here in the area. I was able to get to know Nicole basically because, as I mentioned, we were doing some work with the peer support team. And one of the big challenges that we've had as a peer support team is when we have firefighters that they are not at a critical level where they need to go to like a mental facility necessarily, but they're in a state where they really need to talk to someone and a professional quickly. And what we found is that a lot of counselors and clinicians, it's hard to get an appointment quickly with them. It could take a week, 2 weeks, and sometimes we don't feel like these folks, of course we are impatient. We want problems solved as firefighters quickly. But we also, like you said, want to take care of our people. So we want to get them in to see someone quickly. And Nicole's been someone that we've been able to reach out to who will alter her schedule to meet with people on a short notice. And it's been really helpful to have her as a resource that we can call. So, Nicole, thank you for being here. And first, I guess if you could just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your work.
So I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and just a little bit about my background is I'm a military kiddo and come from a military family. And so first responders, public service is baked into who I am. I'm also married to a law enforcement officer who is a retired federal officer now. So. And what got me passionate was that my dissertation was on pre-existing factors that impact women who develop PTSD who serve in the military. And while I was doing this work, I started seeing individuals who are first responders and seeing some of the same family life stressors that were impacting how they were functioning at work. So after the dissertation was finished and graduation was done, I decided that this was definitely the population that I wanted to work with. So my first responders and my military members and their families, because that's also a huge factor in keeping us working. So it's a passion, and it's definitely needed because in addition to taking care of ourselves as employees, we have to take care of our families. And being aware of how they intertwine is really, really important. So that's the work I get to do.
How long have you been doing that work?
So since 2013.
2013. Okay, awesome. And so, I'm sure you counsel with other people other than first responders, but specifically for first responders or even firefighters, if we want to be more specific, what are your impressions of some of the common themes or challenges that you see with some of the people that you assist?
Well, one of the biggest challenges that I see, and I say challenges, it's also a gift, I view them as both, is that the over dedication to the work. So you'll see that show up with how they view their families. So you'll have a individual who's a coach, a parent, a volunteer, and then they may work in the hospital, doing medical work as EMS in the hospital, and then, they're also a firefighter. So they have multiple hats, and they're stretched thin and incredibly busy. So burnout is a really common experience, and making sure that we're doing things along the way to reduce burnout and build resilience is the most important thing that we can do.
Can you describe burnout a little more and what you think that is, or doesn't have to be a book definition. But
I wanted to make sure I had really good symptoms. And a lot of them will overlap with other experiences like anxiety and depression, but big one is the feeling exhausted or fatigue, sleep issues, changes in appetite. You're getting sick more often. Colds are a real common physical side effect of burnout. We'll have headaches, feeling anxious, distant, listless, hard concentrating, and it usually shows up with also irritability. So those are really common symptoms that show up with burnout. And it's really important to be aware and to notice that in others and to say, hey, I think you might need to actually take a nap or have a Snickers because it's going to make you feel a little bit better. And especially the eating, we tend to shift from eating balanced to eating high carb, high fat, not healthy. And that adds to the breakdown, which then leads to the colds and the illness and the over feelings of fatigue.
And with, we have, our peer support team does have some training. We have some partners at VCU that have been helping us with our training. And then we have our initial training. And then we also have some like quarterly training throughout the year. One of the big things that we talk about is resiliency that you mentioned. So what are some tools, or if you want to, could you talk more about resiliency, what that is and what it looks like for firefighters in particular?
Absolutely. So being in the fire service, that makes you a resilient individual. You've picked a profession and a vocation that really goes to, I want to help others, and that gives us hope. And so hope is one of the biggest pieces of resilience. So things that we do to keep building resilience: diet, exercise, community, hobbies, and fishing really is a great hobby. And spending time with family and friends. Laughter is a huge resilience piece. Jokes, even if they're slightly inappropriate, they're still needed because it helps us keep going and keep motivated. And one of the big things I think with resilience is being able to look at someone else and say, hey, I need you to talk to someone, even if it's just the chaplain, because it lets you know that somebody else is there and cares for you. So that way you have that built-in support, which is also part of that resilience.
And when you talk about support, we certainly, when we have some of these discussions, we talk about what support looks like. Mm-hmm. And when we talk particularly about what I would call a high impact call, those calls that you don't get every day but can have a high impact on someone, and we try and really look at where is this person's support system. For some people that's their crew. The people that they work with, they feel in some ways closer sharing those things with them. They don't take those things home with their spouse or their families. But for others, it is their spouse, or they have a good friend, or someone else that they share with. Or sometimes it's a counselor. So what would you recommend in terms of identifying your own support system, or your how would you go about finding either your support system or those tools? Which ones suit you best to help you develop that resiliency? So
I would definitely look at the individuals that are around you and see who's supportive. A lot of times people are concerned about talking to their spouses. However, spouses already know. So sometimes just having a conversation, even if you don't go into details, allows you to decompress a little bit, but also get the support from your spouse. There's a great book. It's been around, I think it's been around for a couple of years now. There's a version also for law enforcement. It's called I Love a Firefighter. And that book's written by a clinical psychologist, and it really focuses on how the job impacts the family. But as far as going to the support, definitely your crew, like the peer support team, talking to others in the field. Spirituality is a good one. And then friends that you've had for a long time. Again, if you don't have to go into the details of the call. You don't have to go into the things that were the most uncomfortable pieces to necessarily process and decompress. And of course, counseling. And it's really important to find a culturally competent counselor. Somebody who understands first responder culture, somebody who understands fire service culture, and being open to learning if they are not. So it's not something you can just fall backwards into. It takes a little bit of experience to learn. And then my other thing is thinking about hobbies. That's another way to build that social network, especially in this area. There's a lot of people who've had a lot of life experience, especially military, so they can relate to the difficulties and the stress. In addition, there's, like I said, spiritual connections, even if it's just going out and connecting with nature, hiking groups, and then trying a bunch of different things. So if you are not into fishing, perhaps you are a hiker, perhaps you're a photographer, and then connecting with people who do those types of work. Gardening. Gardening's a good one. Simple, easy, get a pot, get a plant, good to go. Get you a tomato.
So you mentioned burnout earlier, yes. And then, kind of alluded to some other issues like depression, anxiety, that PTSD is often something that comes up, particularly with first responders. I would think that it, from everything I've talked with some people that have had it, and some of the, clinicians that we worked with, it certainly can affect us differently than it would necessarily a soldier or someone like that. But how can you, if you're trying to build your own resiliency and that self-awareness, at what point can you start to identify, hey, maybe this isn't something minor or burnout, but maybe this is something more serious like PTSD? How do you start to identify that in yourself or recognize that in yourself so that you can get the proper help for something like that?
Not being able to separate work from home is a big sign, I think, for a lot of people with that stressor. Also, nightmares and not being able to get maybe that last call or that last experience out of your brain, so you're playing it over and over again. Like it's, I would say record, but it depends on the age of people. Playing that particular scene over and over again tells us that, okay, this particular incident might be a little bit more. And so acute stress is maybe a single incident. And then over time, it can turn into post-traumatic stress disorder. So a lot of research suggests and really recommends that people just, it's okay to go and talk and debrief, and doing so actually reduces the likelihood of that re-experiencing, especially with folks who get it, and even people who've had that same experience. The other piece that I would also add is if you're having nightmares, go to therapy. EMDR is incredibly useful. Cognitive behavioral therapy is incredibly useful. Actually, dialectical behavioral therapy is incredibly useful.
Can you explain those procedures a little more
Sure.
for those of us that don't know?
There I go with my acronyms. So EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy, is a therapy that is designed to work on the memories that are related to the trauma. So it includes some eye movement or bilateral stimulation, which kind of go back and forth with your eyes, or you can use hand tappers depending on what the clinician does. Also, you can use auditory. And it just helps us get the entire brain online so we can process through not only the logical, the emotional, but also the somatic reaction, the physical reaction to the events that have occurred. You can get to those same experiences through cognitive behavioral therapy. So cognitive behavioral therapy is how your thoughts and your feelings impact your behavior, and the behavior tends to be how you're coping. Sometimes coping in a positive way, sometimes coping in a way that's causing additional challenges. So being aware of how my behavior, perhaps if I'm drinking too much, would be an example, or if I'm avoiding too much, or if every morning I wake up and go, I don't want to be here. I'm going to work, but I don't want to be here. Those are signs that maybe this is more than just a single incident that'll just blow over. I probably need to go talk to someone to process through. In dialectical behavioral therapy, the big theory is that you can't have two things existing in the same space at the exact same moment. So you can't be super excited and super depressed or super sad at the same time. So you use the opposite to help move your mood so that you're more balanced. And they have some really useful coping skills that really, as far as the behavioral piece, that helps us divert, shift, kind of cope with how we're feeling in the moment. So they have really positive coping skills through that. And good clinicians have experience with all of them.
Okay, awesome. So let's shift for a moment to our other guest, and I'll let Captain, if you want to introduce our other guest, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so our other guest here today is Kevin Knight. He's a lieutenant with us. Kevin, can you just give us a little bit of your background before the fire service and then kind of leading up to now?
Sure. Like Nicole, I was a military kid. My dad was a Marine, and mom was a school teacher, so service was very embedded in myself and my brother. Grew up on military bases a little bit, and was happy to have the freedom of roaming and exploring and stuff like that, and found sports as an outlet for some difficult stuff in my life. Father passed away when I was 12, and just latched on to sports, both basketball and soccer. 8th grade, I was small. My mom said I was a late bloomer, and so I just had this disciplined mindset of, well, I've got to choose one. There's only a couple basketball players that are small, but the best soccer player in the world, they're tiny. So I'll go that route. Sports were a big thing, and service was a big thing. Played soccer in college, and then a little bit after, but then it was time to find a new career, and I honestly didn't know what to do, and was in a car with my brother, and came across an accident where a car had hit a kid on a bicycle, and he had some EMT training, and I was just not in a position where I could help, and I wanted to help, and I could just call in the location, but he was, talking like C-spine this, and he's posturing that, and then the firefighters arrived, and I thought, man, it'd be cool to be in a career helping people, and maybe that was the next thing that I could do. So applied to several places and didn't know a whole lot, but it took a couple years, but I'm very happy that I arrived at Richmond. Rather, I could have landed at other places, but I'm thankful that I'm here. So that's how I arrived at this career, and currently a lieutenant at Engine 13 and on the water rescue team, and that's where I serve presently.
So I have the absolute pleasure of working with Kevin on a day in, day out basis, and I will tell you that his crew is one of the top performing in the department. And so when I thought about this podcast in particular, and we're working a lot of overtime and those kind of things, and so we're able to get into other stations and see how their crews operate. And I kept coming back to, what is Kevin doing? We need more Kevins, because his crew is still, even with all the changes, even with all the extra hours that we're working, they're still the top performers. They're still the ones that come to work every day, and they're happy to be there, and they're engaged. And anytime that I ask any of them, hey, can y'all make sure that this gets done today? It's always like, yep, got it, no problem. Instead of the grumble that you may get other places. And so, I really wanted to talk with Kevin and kind of highlight some of the things that he's doing at 13 and keeping his crew in that space, and just managing his four walls and not necessarily the entire department and taking on all the challenges of the department, but him ensuring that his crew is continuing to move forward and not getting in that negativity. So Kevin, thank you so much for being here with us today, and sharing some of that capability with hopefully the entire department.
Yeah, happy to hear. I have to add just a caveat to that, is that it's the personnel that makes up the station, and sure, officers are important, but the culture that was established on the C shift it's a 2-company house, so between the truck and the engine is integral to everyone working well together. And so for the past few years, that's been a big thing, and then having battalion chiefs that are supportive of us training and thinking outside the box a little bit has been very important as well. So it's the people, and we're constantly trying to improve. So, but I appreciate the comments there.
So how is being a former college professional athlete, how has fitness played into how you view the fire service, or how that's I guess a big part of your life? There's a whole nother part of your life we haven't talked about yet. So you're in a CrossFit gym. How have those experiences impacted how you do your job or how you lead your crew, as Captain mentioned?
They've been intertwined for me from the beginning, because I was playing every day at a sport and at a competitive level before I was hired, and so I had sort of, when I left the competitive sport, there was sort of a void there that I didn't know how I was gonna fill, but I also had this sort of pattern and history of training for something, and it was also Chief Ring, now Lieutenant Ring, who came to the academy and said, you need to just go to this website and see what they're doing, and it was CrossFit, and what that fit a couple of key pieces in my life. One was that it can be treated like a sport, so that's one aspect of what that mode of functional fitness is. So I did compete at it for a while, and it filled that void. But I think more importantly, on the long-term end, two things. One is that for me, it made sense that's how that type of fitness, not necessarily CrossFit, but that type of fitness is how to best prepare for the unknown, and that's what our job is. We don't know when we arrive at work. Are we going to have to sprint through a front door to try to rescue someone? Are we going to have to lift something heavy? or is it going to be a sort of a longer endurance thing that we're going to have to perform, like a long call on the river where we're searching the banks, either on the boat or by foot or swim, whatever it may be. So it made sense to me that this broad generalized fitness, not specializing in one thing, was what would make me and others best prepared for our job. So that was the initial motivation, was I want to be prepared to help others. How that's transitioned over the years is a lot what Nicole was talking about, and I think what this discussion is that it became me trying to be best prepared and perform well to, man, I need this as an outlet for me to stay not just fit, but healthy in my head as well. And that's something that I've found repeatedly in my life as we all go through junk. I've needed that. But that's, people say that to me as well, both at work and at the gym. And it's been a rough day, I just need to work out. Or at the gym, it's I hear repeatedly, this is my sanity. This is what that gets me through the junk in the day. And I think it's an important outlet. There are several, but I think that we are, as people, created, or however you want to put that, but we're made to move. And if we don't move in today's society, we become stagnant. A lot of that stuff can build up. Little things, little altercations can become big ones, and certainly big problems can become seemingly insurmountable. For me and others, expenditure, working out, physical exercise gets, you probably have a more technical term for it. I say gets the junk out.
Transmutes the energy.
See, I knew you had something. I say junk, you say transmutes. It's good.
All at my own college.
Into Captain's point about her observations about you and your crew, and one of my experiences as a company officer and even battalion chief has been that there's also a sense when you can get your crew to do it with you, or like in your gym's case, when you have, because CrossFit is a big community sport, right? Like you all kind of enduring these workouts together separately, but everyone feels the suck of those workouts together, and it builds chemistry. It helps you bond when you go through those things together. And for me, it's always been a way to another form of building chemistry with my crew. And certainly, you're on certain crews where you have people that want to do their own thing when they work out, or they don't like to work out. Maybe they, some people don't like to work out on their work days because they're worried of that big call that could come in, and they don't want to be overly fatigued for that. But when I could get everyone together to work out, play a game, we were talking about cornhole earlier, a little competition, anything like that you can create those experiences in the station, I think, but especially where you can create bonding, and it also is that physical part, like you said, to transmute the energy or get the junk out, which whatever your preferred term is. I think it's good, and it helps create balance for your crews, but also brings you together a little bit, and can maybe help you. It helps build trust too, where you can help maybe in some of those peer support situations. If you're when you're training, training like you should, you're performing at a high level with your crew. Everyone feels better about that, and it does help. I think the two go hand in hand. Help your physical and your mental health. When you're feeling good about what you're doing at work, you feel better overall. If you're doing that on, at the physical and the mental level, then that's, I think, what we're all looking for. I wanted, there's a couple other things that I think between all of us that I think that warrant some discussion if we're talking about these kinds of issues. One is that there's a lot of research coming out now about sleep deprivation and its effects on your physical and your mental health, and also your long-term prospects in terms of health. cancer risk and things like that. So just want to kind of get your thoughts, maybe Nicole, if you want to start on maybe what you know about that and how you see that translate with some of the people you work with.
Absolutely. So with sleep deprivation, which is why I'm a fan of dark-out, blackout curtains for those of us who do shift work, is it can actually contribute to us being less sharp. So the little things that you would have noticed that are significant that would keep you safe or others safe, all of a sudden it just kind of slides slightly off because we're not as attuned. It also impacts things like your overall health. We see higher blood pressure, higher cholesterol individuals with sleep deprivation. They tend to have difficulties with weight overall because, again, their body's not getting the rest that it needs. And my least favorite is that if we continue this over long periods of time, it can actually lead to problems with memory. And some studies are starting to say that there's some signs of dementia related to sleep deprivation. So I really encouraged get the best quality sleep. I understand that that's not always the 6 to 8 to 10 hours, depending on the human, that you need. But if you can get the best quality, meaning that you're getting the most restful and restorative sleep that you can, that's really important. So sleep hygiene and working out is a huge part of that. Figuring out when you can release some of that energy and then being able to calm yourself so you can rest. So sleep hygiene, sleep patterns, developing a sleep routine makes that much easier.
This is also kind of one of those aha moments for me in that, I had, worked normal schedules before I was in the fire department, but then I was on shift work for 14 years until when I made Battalion Chief was my first time back on a conventional 40-hour work week. And one of the things I found out pretty quickly was that there was a huge difference in my energy level from when I was able to get a good night's rest in my own bed every night. So it allowed me, and I think that helped me with some other aspects of like working out. I was more motivated. I could get in more of a routine, and also just when you're on shift work, they're long days. Like you said, they're unpredictable. Sleep, especially as an officer, is not always as available to you because if you have calls at night, a lot of folks can go back to sleep. You got to do the reports and things like that. But when I went back into the field, I could tell just very quickly, it was almost immediate, the effect it had on like you said, my mental sharpness, my energy level. I'm pretty much for 14 years, by about 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm starting to kind of get tired and, really trying to drag through the day. But when I'm on the more conventional schedule, I have energy all day long. So I could definitely see the benefits of that, and definitely are looking for ways that we can try to be mindful of that in our work environments. And as a leader in the fire service, how can we help members get through that, especially as Captain mentioned, with our members working more than, our 56-hour work week is tough anyway, but with everyone working more than 56 consistently now, it seems like it's really something that we have to pay attention to. I don't know if you two have any thoughts on that with your own experiences.
I do. Captain Potter mentioned earlier stigmas that we can get in the fire department. I think that fellow members of the department can be really, really supportive, but sometimes it can be the other way. And so there can be stigmas, people going through stuff, and the people who are going through them being concerned about what other people are saying, and it can become negative. But again, the peer support group and things like that, it's super positive. So I think as a culture in our department, we need to lean more into supporting one another and less tearing each other down. How this relates to sleep is just this. I, as an officer, need to look out for my crew. We call it Hell Week, a day on, a day off, a day on, a day off, a day on. And now we have mandatory overtime in there. So, fine example, we work a Saturday, a Saturday 24 hours, that's the 4th day in our Hell Week. Maybe we've been up all night that Tuesday and Thursday, and even the Saturday. We have mandatory during the day on Sunday, and then come back to work on Monday for another 24. You mentioned, Nicole, the importance of sleep. And what does it mean in that situation to look out for our crew? Yes, we want to be productive, and we want to work out together, train together. But also, we need to be ready to be able to respond to emergencies. There's been a stigma forever on that person sleeps or this person is napping in this situation, and I was one of those people at the beginning. No, we should be working and being productive. There's a big but. If we are working and if we are productive, then there is a very important place for recovery and for sleep. And for us, that doesn't necessarily happen between the normal hours. So I think it should be a shift of what does that mean now that we're working all of these hours, and how do we take care of it? And that needs to be all the way from the top. Not there's still a fear in some crews. Well, what if this person comes into the station and I'm not cleaning, or I'm not working out, or I'm not training? Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is to rest, so we're prepared for the next one. Now, there's a spectrum. We can take things to the extreme. This person always does this, so that's where the managerial side can come in. But I think that's a discussion worth having.
Yeah, I think it's the thing with our schedule and our days is that every day is not the same. So you can't necessarily plan every day out that, all right, from 2 to 4, this is your time to regen. If you want to nap, veg out, whatever. Some days you're working all the way up until 8 o'clock at night, and then other days it's slow during the day. So it's hard to plan for that. But I think, as you mentioned, as a supervisor, being able to read your crew, know their situation. I think that's where you have to develop relationships with them, that they can tell you you kind of know what's going on with them, whether it's something in their personal life. Sometimes you have to give them that space at work if they're going through a hard time, like problems at home, divorce. We've all, not all of us, but a lot of us have gone through those types of struggles in our job and have to still work and perform. But then also, knowing, all right, well, like, this person worked overtime at 5 yesterday. They ran 24 calls, and now he's here today. How do I manage that and make sure that he or she is ready to do their job? And that may mean giving them a little rest, or letting them rejuvenate a little bit at some point during the day.
And I hope that's all in the context of we need to serve, and we need to be prepared to serve and pursue excellence. It's in that context that I'm...
Yeah, and I think that's, like you mentioned, the spectrum. I think you have to recognize that there's a difference between someone that comes in and just doesn't want to do anything because they're lazy, and then there's someone that's recognizing that, they want to, they know where they are and they need a little time, or they need a little rest at some point during the day. Like you said, especially if it's something that someone needs day after day, then, you have to manage that as a supervisor. But I definitely think it should factor into our equation into, as you mentioned earlier, how do we treat our employees? How do we support them? And that's being aware of their physical health and how we can make sure that they're best prepared for that next call. So another one of those topics that I thought like we should discuss, because we're talking about mental and physical health, is diet. And what do we put in ourselves to help get us through that shift work, or what do we, how do we manage stress? For me, like, I know, like, particularly when I don't get a lot of sleep, like, I eat more. I guess it helps, like you mentioned earlier, high carb. Usually a lot of caffeine is what it takes sometimes to get me through, I feel like, which isn't the healthiest. Yeah. as everyone raises their coffee cups. What are your, thoughts on some of that? And diet.
Can I pick on caffeine for just a moment?
Sure.
So it is the nectar of the gods. I don't care what anyone says, but we do need to be aware of how much we're taking. So some of the symptoms of over-caffeinated, like anxious, nervous, not being restless, a lot of times people will mistake that one for anxiety. One of my first questions is, hey, how how much coffee have you had today? My favorite one was one. I was like, 1 cup? Oh, no, 1 pot. I'm like, oh, okay, that could be what's going on. I don't think it's anxiety. I think you might be a little over-caffeinated. So keeping in mind that caffeine's got a really long half-life. It's hanging out for like 10 to 12 hours in your system. Like, that's a long time for anything to spend time there. So just being aware of the consumption, because I know the Bang and the other energy drinks, real popular, but there's a lot in there. So it's going to impact your sleep, because if it's hanging around for 10 to 12 hours in your system, then how are you going to get restful sleep? How are you going to get that nap in when you have the time? Mm-hmm. So please be aware of that. And then my favorite line is, I'm going to need you to eat a vegetable. I understand bread is lovely. I'm a fan of bread. I support bread, but I'm going to need you to put a vegetable in you. Because again, it gives you the right energy. You want to be balanced as best you can. So vegetables.
And I will say, I've been in for 20 years now, and certainly that's one of the, if you talk about changes that you've seen in the fire service, that's something that I have seen change over time, in that a big tradition in the fire service is eating meals together. And when I came in, a lot of those meals were fried, delicious meals, hearty meals, huge meals. We've had some great cooks in our fire department that I love to eat their food, but we also I've seen a shift as more people are more aware of some of, just how to eat better. I myself have learned to eat much differently. But I have seen a change or a shift in the types of meals and even just the structure of what that looks like eating together, because a lot of people have different diets now. So to cook one thing for 8 people is difficult sometimes when you have someone that doesn't, you might have someone that's a vegan, you might have someone that's, can't eat gluten, or, there's a lot of different accommodations that we have to make now that aren't bad, but it definitely has changed how I think people look at food, and also how that impacts our day as firefighters. So I know you two, to me, are two of the healthier people that I know in terms of, I think, that. So I don't know if you want to talk about that. All right, well, let's talk about it. So
I go back and forth, honestly, and I believe that we're learners and we're works in progress. And so, and I also believe that different people have different fuel sources that work for them. That said, like, high sugar is bad, especially over the years. But I also enjoy ice cream, as my crew would quickly tell on me. But for me, it's important to check myself every now and then, and so I'm not advocating this is the most healthy way, and there's certainly other people who are more consistent, but I'll go on challenges. So I recently went on a 75-day thing where it was no processed sugar, no alcohol, and a lot of and a gallon of water a day, and things like that. So that helps to keep me in check. But my struggle is then to go on the other side, which needs to be balanced by exercise and sleep and stuff like that. But it's important to know that, especially now, as you said, that one size doesn't fit all, and I've found that through working with people at the gym. So for some people, counting macros works well for them. They want that structure in their life. For other people, that becomes a mental issue for them, and it consumes them, and it's an unhealthy relationship with food. For some people, they operate really, really well on high protein, high fat, and then other people, it's more healthy carbs and low, meat consumption. So eating together is important, but our health is also important, and what we try to do is find a healthy balance with our crew, which is, if we make taco salad, so we'll buy chips, but we'll also buy greens. So, there's options for people to eat either way at this station.
And I'll say, when you talk about, like, diversity and how that can contribute. I certainly think, in the realm of dieting, it's been the diversity of people that we have has helped me in some ways. Even though I love bacon too much to ever be a vegan, I have friends that in the department that are, and I've listened to what they have to say and their reasons for being vegan or vegetarian or things like that, and I think there's some things that make sense about that, and it made me change how I view certain foods and things. So I think that's it's important, and like you said, what works for some doesn't work for others, but I think you have to kind of, just like working out, find what works for you, what your body responds to, and helps you be your best at your best. So another topic that I'd like to broach, I feel like we're going to talk about mental health and physical health, that we can't really not talk about this, but is suicide in the fire service, or for public safety. Some people, estimate that the number of suicides in the fire service is some as much 2 to 3 times higher than our line of duty deaths in a year. A lot of that's hard to determine because a lot of times suicide isn't reported if that's the cause of death. So it's hard to get that data. But certainly something that has impacted our department over the years. It's a serious topic. It's one of the motivators for me and Brian that I mentioned earlier, having starting the peer support team, because we've had a few of our members over the years that this has touched and continues to. So I guess, Nicole, this falls back into your realm. So maybe if you have some things you could discuss about that and experiences or advice, and maybe we can kind of go from there.
Well, definitely, it's hard to predict. There's a whole field of study, literally it's called suicidology, that looks at suicide. And the challenge is that the symptoms are so wide. There's some commonality with the person's probably experiencing large amounts of depression or experiencing large amounts of trauma. They have not sought treatment. They're distancing. They're not engaging in things that they used to enjoy. So there are some signs, but some of the resilient preventative measures is for people to get things like wellness checks, and really having departments and agencies support that, hey, it's okay to go talk to someone. It's not a bad thing. Again, even if the person you're talking to is just a chaplain, a lot of those individuals have gone through some counseling classes as part of their chaplaincy. And being aware that if you're seeing something, say something to someone. Like, hey, I'm worried about you. I know this shrink, and she's not terrible, and I'll go with you. And being open to doing that. And I say she or he, they're not terrible. Being open to saying to that person. And then I think it does come from the top. If command says, hey, I talked to somebody. What? Yes, I talked to somebody. It really helps make it feel safe to go seek help if needed. But definitely just being aware, especially when you're that close-knit in a group or you're interacting, if the person's starting to pull away or act different, it's okay to say something. Say, I care about you, I'm concerned, what can I do? Is there anything I can do? Even if it's we just go out back and play basketball, and trying to really make sure that person's fostering those connections to get them re-engaged. And somebody who's actually saying, I don't want to be here, that's someone you definitely want to have them go talk to someone. And it's not, I don't want to be here at work. I'm okay with not being here. If something were to happen, that would be called that kind of passive thoughts. If something were to happen to me, it would be okay. That's when you're saying, oh yeah, no, we need to go find someone. That doesn't necessarily mean that they need to go inpatient, because there's not that second part of the plan and intent. But that passive kind of thought process is a great time to step in. And folks will say it in their language. So pay attention to what people are actually saying, and listening. And don't be afraid to ask. So if somebody's feeling some type of way and you hear the language and you're like, that bothers me. Are you okay? Is there something that you need? Just ask them. Most people feel some sense of relief when someone says, hey, I'm concerned about you. You've said these things. So don't be afraid to bother your friend.
I think that supportive side is terribly important when it comes, especially as supervisors in the fire department. Yeah. Because we have a lot of military people that have transitioned now into the fire service. And so, the military, and I know this from dealing with my husband, the military side really put back in the day, a really bad label to anybody that needed mental health assistance. And so now those folks are working in the fire service, and it's a challenge to get them to understand that, hey, look, this isn't really bad. It's another way of coping. I don't care how you cope, but we got to get, through a positive way of doing that coping. And so, I am an open book. I will share my story, my life history with anyone because I've run through challenges. I have been down dark roads. I have been at the peaks of the highest mountains. And I will tell you that, I tell everybody, you have a choice to make. You're either going to be a victim or you're going to survive it. And, my mindset is always to survive. And so, the mentality there of, hey, look, even I have sought, help, or I share my story and tell somebody, hey, it's okay. You can overcome anything. Those are the times that we really make that impact.
So, since we have you here, Captain, what do you feel like in the realm of this discussion are some of the challenges that are unique to women in terms of mental health or physical health in the fire service?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, if you would have asked me that 5 years ago before I had my first child, my answer probably would have been way different than it is now. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't really see a lot of those challenges. Yeah, everybody looked at me. I was a tiny little female in the fire department, but no one really challenged me. Now I find that the mental health side is a challenge for me because every call I run, I check myself. Where that I used to never check myself. I'd run into every burning building in the city of Richmond, no problem, no questions asked. And now I'm like, ooh, I got 2 kids I got to think about. Let me play this a little bit more safe. It doesn't mean that I'm not going in, but I have them always in the back of my mind. After I had Riker and Xander, I really struggled with mom guilt. And so I didn't want to do anything for me. It was all about spending time with them, especially after a 24-hour shift. I wanted to go back and I wanted to be present for them. And then I realized that my stress level was starting to tick up in dealing with them, and then dealing with, I kind of joke about it. Everybody kind of gave me a hard time. Oh, you're working on Mother's Day? And I was like, no, these are my kids too. It's okay. But I was trying to balance my family life and my work life with no working out, eating terrible, all these things. And I was like, whoa, I need to realize that my kids are not getting the best version of me. If I carve out an hour of time for me to get a workout in, they're getting a better version of me. And so I really had to refocus my own mind about how that I looked at my time and the ability to spend with them and having better quality of time with them as opposed to just being present. So I just think that that's kind of one of those things that I had to overcome myself. The other thing that I would mention is that females handle things differently. So if we run a call with a kid and we have kids, it's going to impact us way differently. Not to say that it doesn't impact, a male at all, but it's a different level sometimes. A lot of times we will envision our child there. We will, really put ourselves in, it becomes that fight or flight where that, hey, this could happen at any moment to my own child, and we want to always protect. I tell everybody that I am mama bear to the max. Nobody messes with my kids, but then I take on everybody's kids. So everybody are they're all my kids. But I would just be mindful of that. Females have a lot to overcome in the department already with, hey, you're not strong enough. Hey, you're not competent enough, whatever. Allow us and each other to feel whatever emotion is in that moment without judgment. Mm-hmm. I promise you that we are internalizing it way, way more than any male could ever do out there. And we are beating ourselves up for feeling the way that we feel. But it's be allowed to be aware of them and they're in that moment, and just understand that, hey, they need to process, and they may process differently, and it's okay, So, as far as the female side, I try to always say that, hey, there are no differences. We can do the job. We can do all these things, just like anybody else can. And I really do think that females play an important part in the diversity and the culture of the fire department. And it's important to have all of that. But understand that there are cultural differences. There are, differences based on gender, even age, all these things that are occurring, and just be supportive to one another.
Well, I really appreciate everyone, joining us to talk about these topics today. I would like to, I think we're going to wrap it up, but I would like to I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention at least that, if something in this podcast has resonated with you and in terms of wanting to get some help or recognizing that, hey, these are some of the problems, I'm having some of these problems that they're mentioning. There are a lot of resources out there for you, and we want to make sure that you're aware of those. So, we've mentioned our peer support team. We have peer supporters. They're firefighters. You're welcome to reach out to them. Not every one on that list is probably going to be someone you want to talk to, but hopefully there's at least one person on that list you feel comfortable talking to. So feel free to reach out to them. I myself, we talked about, counseling as an option. I have found that to be a very useful option for me over the years at different points in my career, whether I'm dealing with personal things or things with the job. So if you've never tried it and you are having some of these issues, it's accessible. Give it a try, and it may help you. And it may take more than one counselor. Not every counselor you go to is you're going to connect with, but if you give it a try with several different ones, you may. I'd also say that we have an employee assistance program that has a variety of other options that are available to you to use. You can talk with your officer or investigate on the city website. There's a lot of options there as well to help you with some of these issues. If you think that you're in one of those more serious categories, there's some other resources as well. Certainly, if you've had thoughts of suicide, you definitely want to talk with a professional. There's also a specific firefighter suicide hotline that you can call. They're open 24/7. I think that's sponsored by the IFF. The number is 1-800-273-TALK, 8255. There's also a more extensive program that I know some of our members have engaged in. It's called that's also sponsored by the IFF, which is the Center for Excellence. It's a residency program where it gives you an opportunity to go and be there and have some time away to work on some issues that you may have. Nicole has given me a few other resources. American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. CDC also has some resources. The National Center for PTSD, National Institute of Mental Health, and there's also a National Suicide Prevention line. I think you mentioned All Hands Working. Do you know much about that organization, Nicole?
Yeah, so it's a national organization. They provide connections with providers in the area. They also can link with some residential programs and support to the family. Okay. So then that's firefighter specific. And then International Association of Chiefs of Police, while it is law enforcement, they work with IFF and have resources actually on their page for providers in the area. And there's also specific psychological sections where you can find individuals who provide therapy and other supports through them within your area.
And we certainly, my hope is that by giving a lot of different resources, not every one of these resources is going to be right for everybody. Kind of as we were talking about diet and exercise and how everyone's different. So, but hopefully some of these, one of these resources will resonate with you if you're having an issue. And certainly, that's part of the purpose of this is for people to, be more aware, be more aware of yourself as well. In terms of, we were talking earlier about resiliency. we can certainly provide you resources about resiliency, or you can look it up on your own and start to think about, how you can build that within yourself, how you can build your own support network to get through some of these issues. So I appreciate Nicole and Kevin, you being here with us today to discuss this. It's a really important topic, and we thank you for all of your insight and your information, and hope that those listening will benefit from all of this information. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could bug you one last time, and I'm going to put both of y'all on the spot. We have listeners that are not just fire department centered. If that you both could come up with one thing from the firefighter side and the public side that would be, if that you had a message, the one takeaway from today's podcast, what would you say that is from from the profession of firefighter and the public side?
Profession of firefighter is that we all, those individuals who serve, you're people too. So please be aware of that and honor the fact that you're human. So if you're tired, you're tired. If you're hungry, you're hungry. If you're bored, you're actually bored. It's okay. So honor the fact that you're human. And then from the public side, especially thinking about what's happened over the last couple of years with all the political unrest, these public servants are just that. And so trying to just honor the fact that, yes, they're there and connecting with the community, but also the other end is that they also have a job to do. So while there's frustration, just remember, again, humans on the other side.
I think it's two things for me, and I don't know if I think they might apply to both, and that's just number one's a little bit different is to know your why. I think we're all valuable, and we all deep down have a purpose that motivates us, and it's important to remind myself of that because I can easily get off track. Why are you here and what are you doing? And then we can come up with ways that support that and make us most effective in that. And for me, mental health is the immediate thing that I can do is exercise and eat better. Those two things, when I'm in a funk, well, have you worked out today? Have you worked out in a couple of days? Or if I'm having an altercation with a captain of the station, I don't know, disagreement about something. I'll be in the weight room for the next little bit. I know you've done the same thing.
Always.
So, yeah, I think what I have to remind myself is know your why. Why are you here? What are you doing? And then support that with immediately with an outlet, which for me is physical activity.
Thank you for sharing. Captain, did you have any other comments, or did you want to answer your own question?
I would just put it out there to everybody that, there are so many resources out there. You're not in anything alone. My phone stays on 24/7, even if you think that I could help you. I'm not part of peer support, and I'm not a counselor by any means, but I have life experiences that have challenged me up to even here recently with the passing of my father, and just to overcome that stuff. There are people that are in the same places that you may be in right now, and like Nicole said, we are all human and we all process things differently. So sometimes it's the shotgun approach, like, hey, let me throw everything at this problem so that we can resolve it. So, if there's anything that I can personally do for anybody, my phone, like I said, is always on. And, we just don't want to lose anybody else to any of the mental health side of things. So I appreciate everybody being here, just like you. What about you, Chief?
So I would say, to your point, I think, one thing that we learned about with the peer support when we first started that, we didn't start it with just volunteers, because people volunteer for a lot of different reasons. What we did was get people to be recommended by others, because we knew that there were a lot of people already doing this. It wasn't formal. And I think even though we have a peer support team, there's still a lot of folks, like you mentioned, that just care about people. It's kind of the nature of who does this job. So even if you don't feel comfortable with a peer supporter or someone on the list, then maybe there's someone that in this department that's doing a lot of that work already that isn't maybe an official peer supporter. So talk to who you feel comfortable talking to, and definitely develop your own system. I know Nicole mentioned earlier some things that some resiliency building activities. I've also found it really helpful in the last few years which is another concept that's gaining a lot more publicity, I guess you'd say, or it's becoming more common, is mindfulness. Taking some time. You mentioned fishing or being in nature. Taking some time for yourself. I'm historically, and my family would say that I am one of the most inflexible people that you will meet, but I have discovered and worked with yoga over the last couple of years and have found that to be a very good exercise for me, a grounding exercise in terms of being able to just focus on my breathing, my body. It's a physical activity, but it's also a way of, depending on what kind of mood I'm in, sometimes it is that I'm just focusing on the physical part of it, but it's slow and methodical. And then other times it's almost like a moment of reflection, and just kind of, I'm more in a thought process, working through issues or whatever I'm dealing with at that time. And then other times it could even be more of like a prayer type situation. I am a person of faith, and sometimes that movement and exercise, focus on my breathing, is also a way to pray that I found useful. So I would say, find, as Kevin mentioned, he's pretty defined in his system of how he can ground himself when he has tough things. So I would say, for whatever it is, find your system and your support, those people that you want to talk to, and the things that you can do personally that can help you kind of reset and what works for you, because I think that can make all the difference. And then also learn yourself enough to know when you may need extra help, because I think we all get to points in our lives with whether it's job or personal issues that you may feel like it's just a little too much for you, where some of these things aren't working. You're doing all those things and you still aren't, what I would call like leveling out or grounding yourself. So if you see all those support systems are still not working, then don't be scared to go to another level to seek help, so that you can try and get yourself back to where you need to be. So that's what I would say. So
Thank you.
And thank all of you for being here. Thanks to all of our listeners. We hope that this has an impact. It's an important topic, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you.